Snow keeps falling like it has paperwork. People keep moving like they don't feel it. A clinic lobby under cold lights, wet coats, phones. A child coughs into a sleeve. A coffee spills and nobody looks up. Officer_EC, calm, focused male officer, early 30s, medium athletic build, defined jawline, short textured dark hair, light stubble, slightly tired eyes, natural skin texture with pores, tactical police uniform with subtle wear marks, grounded, realistic expression walks in with K9_shadow, black and tan German Shepherd, black saddle pattern, black facial mask, golden tan fur, upright alert ears, amber eyes, small notch on left ear, muscular structure, realistic fur texture, tactical K9 harness. Shadow stops. Not fear, not excitement, just refusal. Leash goes tight. Officer_EC doesn't speak. He listens. In the back corridor, a metal door pulses once, then again, like something inside is trying not to make noise. The snow didn't come down in flakes. It came down in decisions, thick, persistent, and absolute, like the sky had voted to erase the county and nobody on the ground got a say. The 2-lane road into Briar Ridge was a corridor of white walls and dark pine, the kind of place where headlights didn't cut the night so much as negotiate with it. The plows had already given up. Their last pass sat in the form of a frozen berm at the roadside, as if the machine had simply stopped and admitted the truth. Not tonight. Officer Ethan Cole drove anyway. He didn't drive like a man chasing glory. He drove like a man who understood what panic did to traction, what noise did to judgment. His hands stayed steady at 10 and 2, the wheel moving in small, careful corrections as the cruiser crawled forward, tires chewing through slush and crunching ice. In the passenger side footwell, a German Shepherd lay curled tight, but not asleep. Shadow's head was up. His eyes tracked every shift of light, every flare of reflective snow. Not fear, not excitement, scanning, evaluating. The same silent vigilance he'd had since Ethan first met him, the kind of watchfulness that wasn't taught so much as forged. Ethan kept his voice low. "Easy, bud." Shadow didn't look at him, not fully, but his ears flicked once, an acknowledgement that Ethan was there, that the world still had a center. The radio crackled with static and a clipped voice trying to sound calm. "Unit 12, confirm your status." Ethan pressed the mic. 12, en route to clinic. 2 minutes out. A pause. Static. Then Captain Maria Hayes. "Cole, tell me you're not doing this alone." "I'm not," Ethan said, eyes on the road. "Shadow's with me." "That's not what I meant." The captain's voice was pragmatic, controlled, empathy wrapped in chain of command. "You were cleared to transport, not to improvise treatment. Dr. Moore is meeting you." "She's already there?" "She's already on her way," Hayes corrected. "Lucas is at the station. I'm patching him to you." Before Ethan could answer, a second voice cut in, young, bright, carrying too much energy for the weather. "Ethan, Officer Cole, copy that. I'm rolling now. Please tell me this is not the thing I think it is." Ethan exhaled once through his nose. "Depends what you think it is, Deputy Reed." "That K9 from the highway, the one that—" Lucas stopped himself, swallowed the rest. "Okay. Yeah, I'm coming." Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. The clinic appeared through the snow like a stranded ship, a low brick building with a single floodlight over the entrance and a sign that read, "Briar Ridge Animal Care," in peeling blue letters. The parking lot was empty except for one vehicle already there, Captain Hayes' SUV, engine running, headlights on, waiting. Ethan eased the cruiser into a spot near the door, killed the lights, and sat for one beat with both hands on the wheel. The silence in the car wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, a held breath. Shadow shifted, nails clicking softly against the rubber mat. Ethan turned slightly, meeting the dog's eyes. In the dim cabin light, Shadow's gaze looked darker than it was, almost black like a window into something that didn't have language. "You stay with me," Ethan murmured. "We do this clean." Shadow's ears flicked again. Agreement. Ethan opened the door. The cold hit like a slap and a grab at once, stealing air, squeezing the lungs. Snow whipped sideways in hard sheets. His boots sank into a shallow drift as he rounded the cruiser. He didn't reach for Shadow's harness right away. He watched first. The back door of the cruiser, secured, modified for K9 transport, wasn't just closed. It was pressed from inside, as if something large had been pushing against it for a while and had only stopped when the car stopped. Ethan set his hand on the latch, felt the tension through the metal. "Shadow," he said once, calm as a metronome. The dog slid out the passenger side, silent, quick, moving to Ethan's left like it was a practiced ritual. Shadow's body stayed close, but not clingy, ready to move if Ethan moved. Ethan opened the back door. The smell hit first, not the usual dog smell, not wet fur and breath. This was copper and antiseptic, hot blood trapped in cold air. Under that, the sharp sting of cordite, old, embedded, the kind that didn't wash out. Inside the kennel space, another dog stared at him. Not Shadow. This dog was bigger than most shepherds. Built like power had been compressed into bone and muscle. His coat was darker, rougher. His eyes were wide, but not panicked. They weren't pleading either. They were locked. Cornered doesn't always mean afraid. Sometimes it means ready. The dog's flank was wrapped in a makeshift bandage that had soaked through. Blood had dried into the fur in thick, cracked streaks. Every breath made the bandage shift. Every shift looked like pain with teeth. Ethan didn't move quickly. He crouched, not low like submission, not tall like dominance. Neutral. Present. "Hey," he said softly, as if greeting someone he didn't want to startle. The dog's lips pulled back, not into a full snarl, but a warning baring of teeth. A sound rose in his throat, low, vibrating, restrained. Shadow stayed beside Ethan, still as carved wood. Ethan didn't look away from the injured dog. "I'm not here to take you," he murmured. "I'm here to keep you alive." The warning growl thickened. Captain Hayes' SUV door slammed behind Ethan. Footsteps crunched. Maria Hayes appeared at the edge of the cruiser's light, bundled in a heavy coat with her hair pulled back tight. Hayes didn't raise her voice. "Cole!" Ethan didn't turn. "He's conscious. He's guarding the wound." "He's guarding everything," Hayes said quietly. A figure moved behind Hayes in the storm. Dr. Lena Moore, arriving fast, hood up, her medical bag strapped across her chest. She pushed through the wind like she'd already made peace with being uncomfortable. Lena's eyes narrowed the moment she saw the dog. Not fear, calculation. "How long since the injury?" she asked. Ethan answered without looking away. "Less than an hour. Found him off the highway, dragging himself." "Any vehicle impact?" "Possibly, but the pattern doesn't look like it." Lena nodded once like she'd filed the information into a drawer. She stepped closer, and the injured dog's teeth flashed again, faster, sharper. A warning directed at her, precise. Hayes shifted her weight. "We can't treat him in the cruiser." Lena's voice stayed even. "We treat him wherever he allows us to treat him. That's the first rule." Shadow's ears flicked toward Lena. Ethan spoke softly without moving too much. "Doc, he's not like Shadow. He's trained differently." Lena studied the dog's posture, the way his weight was angled, the way his eyes tracked hands, not faces. "I can see that," she said. "He's mapping threats." Hayes exhaled once, controlled but tense. "We sedate him and get him inside." Ethan finally turned his head slightly, just enough for Hayes to see his expression. Calm, disciplined, but something behind it that didn't bend easily. "With what?" Ethan asked. "In this weather, with his blood loss, sedation is a coin flip." Hayes' jaw tightened. "A coin flip beats bleeding out in the back of your cruiser." Ethan didn't argue. He didn't lecture. He just looked back into the kennel. The dog stared at him like he was deciding what Ethan was. Not authority, not friend, just another human hand in the dark. Ethan reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a strip of gauze, clean. He held it in his open palm, then set it down on the lip of the kennel opening. Not inside, not invading. "Lena," he said quietly, "what do you need?" Lena shifted her bag down, careful, and spoke like she was building a plan in real time. "Light, pressure, something to keep him from biting while I assess, but—" Her gaze flicked to Shadow. "We don't have the luxury of force." Hayes' eyes narrowed. "We have the luxury of survival." Ethan's voice stayed low. "Survival isn't just keeping the heart beating." Hayes looked at him then, really looked, like she was hearing what he wasn't saying. Ethan didn't give her the full story. He rarely did. Not because he wanted secrets, but because some things didn't land well when said out loud. Some things sounded like excuses until you'd lived them. He focused on the dog again. The injured K9's breathing hitched. He shifted his weight and let out a short, frustrated sound, half growl, half pain. Shadow took a single half-step forward, not toward the dog, but toward Ethan, tightening their formation. A silent question. Ethan answered it without words. He laid one hand on Shadow's shoulder, steady, grounding. Shadow didn't soften. He didn't wag. He simply held Ethan's line like he was anchoring it to the earth. Ethan spoke into the kennel, voice barely above the storm. "I'm going to open the door wider. I'm not going to touch you yet." The dog's eyes narrowed. Ethan moved slowly, adjusting the kennel latch, widening the opening. The dog snapped, fast, deliberate, teeth slicing air inches from Ethan's glove. Not a wild bite, a warning strike. "Don't!" Ethan didn't jerk back. He didn't flinch. His pulse stayed inside his voice, not on the outside. "Okay," he murmured. "Message received." Hayes's tone sharpened. "Ethan!" "Give me 30 seconds," Ethan said, still calm but firmer now. "If I can't get him to stop striking, you do whatever you need to do, but not before." Hayes hesitated, then nodded once, tight. 30. Lena glanced at Hayes, then back at Ethan. "What are you thinking?" Ethan's eyes didn't leave the dog. "He's not lashing out at Shadow." Lena's brow furrowed. "Because Shadow hasn't approached." "No," Ethan said softly, "because Shadow's not acting like a stranger. He's acting like a partner." Shadow's head tilted slightly, ears forward. Ethan took a breath and did something subtle. He changed his posture just enough that his shoulders angled away from the dog, reducing his profile. Less confrontational, more neutral. Then he spoke to Shadow, not as an order, but as a reminder. "Shadow, sit." Shadow sat instantly, smooth and precise, eyes still up. The injured dog's gaze flicked, just once, to Shadow, then back to Ethan. Ethan noticed the flicker. He kept his voice low and steady, the kind of tone you used when you didn't want to wake up the parts of someone that were already too awake. "You see him," Ethan said to the injured dog. "He listens because he trusts, not because I'm loud." The dog's lips trembled into a deeper snarl. Ethan nodded, as if agreeing. "Yeah, I know." Behind Ethan, the clinic door opened, and a blast of warm air spilled out. Deputy Lucas Reed burst into view, hood half on, cheeks red from the cold. He stopped dead when he saw the scene. "Oh," Lucas breathed. "Yep, this is exactly what I thought it was." Hayes flicked her eyes toward Lucas. "Reed, inside. Now, get towels, heat packs, anything sterile, and bring the portable floodlight." Lucas saluted like he was trying to convince his body to be serious. "Yes, ma'am." He spun and nearly slipped, caught himself, and disappeared inside. Ethan stayed locked in place. The injured dog's breathing stuttered again. He shifted, and the bandage peeled slightly. Fresh blood seeped through, a slow leak that was starting to become a steady one. Lena's voice tightened just a fraction. "Ethan, he's losing too much." "I know," Ethan murmured. Hayes stepped closer, her boots crunching. "Time's up." Ethan didn't move away. He didn't square off. He simply said, 10 more. Hayes' eyes flashed. "Cole." Ethan finally looked at her fully. The calm in his face wasn't defiance, it was conviction. "If we sedate him wrong," Ethan said quietly, "we don't just lose him. We confirm what he already believes, that humans end him when he becomes inconvenient." Hayes held his gaze, the storm roaring around them like the world had its own opinion. Then Hayes looked at Lena. Lena's expression was controlled, but her eyes were sharp. "He's right about the risk, but he's not wrong about the psychology either." Hayes exhaled hard, the fog of her breath blowing sideways. "Fine. 10. Ethan nodded once and turned back. He lowered his hand slowly toward the kennel lip again, not reaching for the dog, reaching for the strip of gauze he'd left there. The injured dog watched the hand like it was a weapon. Ethan slid the gauze toward the dog, inch by inch, then stopped. "Take it," he said softly, "or don't. It's yours." For a long moment, nothing changed. Then the dog's nose moved, one cautious inch forward, then another. He sniffed the gauze, not because he wanted it, but because he needed to know if it was a trick. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't move. He let the silence do the work. The dog's jaw opened just enough to grab the gauze. He pulled it back into the kennel and pressed it, awkwardly, painfully, against his own wound. A grim, instinctive gesture. Self-aid. "I don't need you." But his eyes never left Ethan. Ethan's voice was almost a whisper. "You can do that, but you can't stop the bleeding alone." The dog's throat vibrated with another growl, weaker this time. Hayes murmured behind Ethan, "He understands you." Lena answered softly. He understands the shape of what Ethan is doing. Lucas returned with an armload of supplies, a portable light, and a stack of towels. He approached and stopped at a safe distance, eyes wide. "Okay," Lucas said under his breath, "that dog is not a fan of people." "No sudden movements," Ethan said, still facing the kennel. Lucas nodded so hard his hood bounced. "I am the definition of not sudden." Ethan almost smiled. Almost. He didn't have space for humor right now, but Lucas's energy eased the air by 1 degree, took the edge off the institutional panic. Ethan glanced at Lena without turning fully. "Doc, if I can get him to accept contact, can you do a quick assessment at the vehicle?" "Yes," Lena said, "but he needs a focal point. He needs one person to lock onto." Ethan nodded once. "That's me." Hayes' voice was careful now. "Ethan, if this fails—" "I know," Ethan said, and he meant it. "Then you do what you have to do." Ethan shifted closer, just 1 step. The dog stiffened. Ethan stopped immediately and lowered his voice further, as if speaking to something fragile. "I'm going to touch your collar," he said. "Not your wound, just the collar." The dog's teeth showed again, a thin line of white in the dim. Ethan didn't recoil. He didn't advance. He simply waited, steady as snowfall. Shadow stayed sitting, but his eyes were on the injured dog now, intensely, like he was listening with more than ears. Ethan slowly extended his hand into the kennel, 2 fingers first, then his palm, open, low. The dog snapped again, faster than before. Ethan's hand froze in place, not pulling away, not pushing forward. He let the dog see. "I'm not fighting you. I'm not taking from you." The dog's teeth hovered in the air near Ethan's glove, a warning held at the edge of contact. Then, just barely, the dog's jaw eased. Not trust, not surrender. A pause. Ethan took that pause and breathed into it. "Good," he whispered. "Good." Behind him, Lucas held his breath so hard his shoulders rose. Hayes' hand hovered near her radio, ready to call it in. Lena's fingers tightened on the edge of her medical bag. Ethan's hand moved again, 1 inch toward the collar line, and the injured dog's body trembled. Not aggression, something else. A crack in the armor. His breathing hitched again, and the growl changed shape. Less threat, more grief. Ethan stopped moving entirely. His eyes softened without losing focus. "Yeah," Ethan murmured, "I know what that feels like." The dog stared at him, and for a moment, in the howl of snow and the glare of clinic light, it felt like the whole scene balanced on something invisible, something no policy manual could name. Ethan held his hand there, suspended, letting the dog decide. Shadow's ears flicked, like he sensed the shift, too. Captain Hayes spoke, barely audible. "Ethan." Ethan didn't look away. Just a little longer. The injured dog's gaze dropped, just once, to Ethan's open palm, then back to Ethan's eyes. And he didn't bite. Not yet, but he didn't back away either. A fragile truce formed in the air between breath and blood. Ethan's fingers lowered until they were close enough to touch the collar. He whispered, not a command, more like a promise. "Let me help." The dog's jaw quivered, and then, with a slow, careful motion that looked like it cost him pride, pain, and memory all at once, he shifted forward 1/2 inch. Closer, not to attack, to test, to decide. Ethan didn't move fast. He didn't celebrate. He simply kept his hand steady, offering the same thing he'd offered all along. Presence. Outside, the storm pressed harder against the building, like it wanted to push them into making a choice. Inside the kennel space, the injured K9's breath came out in a shuddering exhale. And for the first time since Ethan had found him dragging himself through the snow, the dog's eyes didn't look like a bomb waiting to go off. They looked like a soldier trying to remember what safe used to mean. Ethan's fingers brushed the edge of the collar. The dog flinched, but didn't strike. Hayes's voice tight with relief and fear at the same time. Okay, keep going." Lena's tone. "Ethan, if you can hold that connection, I can work." Ethan didn't answer either of them. He couldn't, because the dog's eyes were locked on his, and Ethan knew exactly what the next second required. No hesitation, no force, no lies. Only the kind of calm you couldn't fake, and the kind of trust you couldn't demand. You could only earn it, one breath at a time. The first touch lasted less than a second. Just the lightest brush of Ethan's fingers against the worn nylon of the collar, frayed, scorched in places, stiff with dried blood. Not skin, not fur, not pain. Contact without threat. The injured canine froze. Every muscle in his body locked at once, like a command had been issued somewhere deep in his nervous system and executed without debate. His breath stalled halfway through an inhale, chest shuddering. Ethan didn't pull away. He didn't press closer either. He stayed exactly where he was, fingers resting against the collar, hand open, relaxed. No grip, no pressure. A touch that could be withdrawn at any moment. The dog's eyes flicked, not to Ethan's hand, but to Ethan's face, reading. Shadow rose from his sit without a sound and shifted his weight just slightly, angling his body so that he was no longer a straight line behind Ethan, but offset, visible but not looming. A mirror. The injured dog noticed that too. His ears twitched. Ethan swallowed once, slow, careful. He felt his pulse in his throat, but kept it out of his hands. "That's it," he murmured. Nothing bad happened. The dog's breath came out in a thin, trembling stream. Lena took one cautious step closer, stopping well outside the dog's strike radius. She lowered the portable floodlight just enough to illuminate the wound without flaring it directly into the dog's eyes. The sudden brightness made the dog tense again, muscles bunching, jaw tightening. Ethan reacted instantly, but not with words. He shifted his posture again, subtle, deliberate, blocking part of the light with his shoulder, reducing the glare. The dog's tension eased a fraction. Lena blinked, registering the adjustment. She lowered the light further. "Good catch," she murmured. Hayes let out a breath she'd been holding. "You're reading him like a person." Ethan didn't answer. He was too busy listening. The injured canine's breathing was still uneven, but the growl had disappeared completely now. What remained was something softer, broken at the edges, short, involuntary sounds that came with pain and effort, not threat. Ethan let his fingers slide just a centimeter farther along the collar, enough to feel the metal ring beneath, cool against his glove. The dog didn't snap, didn't pull away. He trembled. Ethan's voice dropped even lower, almost a vibration rather than sound. "You don't have to fight right now." The dog's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but concentration. His head dipped a fraction of an inch, like he was weighing the statement against a lifetime of learned rules. Fight, hold, endure. Those rules didn't include trust strangers. Behind Ethan, Lucas whispered to Hayes, "Is he crying?" Hayes shot him a look, but she didn't correct him, because the sound the dog made then wasn't a growl or a bark or even a whine. It was a thin, fractured noise, part breath, part memory, that cracked at the end like something breaking loose inside his chest. Ethan felt it more than he heard it. His jaw tightened. He had heard that sound before. Not from a dog, from people, from men who woke up gasping in recovery wards with no idea how they'd survive the night. "Doc," Ethan said softly, never taking his eyes off the dog, "you have a window." Lena didn't hesitate. She moved in slow, deliberate increments, staying low, keeping her hands visible. She knelt beside the open kennel door, not entering it, not challenging the space, but close enough to reach the wound if allowed. The dog noticed her immediately. His head lifted, teeth flashing, not in a snap, but a warning. Ethan responded before it could escalate. "Easy," he murmured, and this time he did add the smallest bit of pressure, his fingers curling just enough around the collar to be felt, not to restrain, but to anchor. The dog froze again. Ethan leaned in, his forehead nearly level with the dog's, their breath mixing in the cold air. "She's here to fix the part that hurts," Ethan said quietly, "not take anything else from you." The dog's eyes flicked to Lena's hands. She stopped moving instantly. "I won't touch him unless you tell me to," she said, not to Ethan, but to the dog. Her voice was clinical but respectful, as if addressing a patient who deserved consent. The dog stared at her for a long moment. Then his gaze shifted back to Ethan. Ethan nodded once. "I won't let her hurt you." That was the moment. The injured canine made a decision. Slowly, painfully, he shifted his weight. His hind leg slid forward just enough to expose the edge of the wound. Not obedience, permission. Lena's breath caught. Hayes felt her chest tighten. "Did you see that?" Lucas nodded vigorously, eyes wide. "Oh yeah, I saw that." Ethan didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He simply said, "Thank you," to the dog. Lena moved then, careful, precise. She didn't reach directly for the wound. She placed her hand on the towel beside it first, letting the dog feel the pressure before contact. The dog tensed, then stilled. Ethan kept one hand on the collar, the other hovering just above the dog's shoulder, ready to soothe, ready to retreat if needed. "Entry point looks jagged," Lena murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "Shrapnel, maybe. Muscle tear." The dog flinched when her fingers brushed too close to the raw tissue. Ethan felt the tremor immediately. He leaned closer and spoke softly, not with commands, but cadence. "In, out," he murmured. "In, out." Shadow's ears perked. The injured dog's breathing slowed, matching the rhythm without realizing it. Lena paused, eyes flicking up. "That's working." Ethan nodded slightly. He knows pacing. Lena adjusted, changing her approach, working around the wound instead of into it. She applied gentle pressure to slow the bleed. The dog let out a low sound, halfway between a sigh and a whimper. Ethan's grip tightened just a fraction, not restraining, reassuring. "You're doing good," he whispered. "You're still in control." Hayes watched the scene unfold with something close to awe. She'd commanded teams under fire, negotiated hostage situations, stared down armed men, but she'd never seen authority look like this. No raised voice, no badge, just presence. The storm outside battered the building, wind howling against brick and glass like it wanted to tear the night open. Inside, time slowed to a different rhythm. Lena worked efficiently, methodically, narrating her movements in a calm monotone, not for the humans in the room, but for the dog. "I'm cleaning," she said softly. "Cold, then pressure." The dog stiffened at the cold antiseptic, then settled again. Blood still seeped, but slower now. "Bleeding's decreasing," Lena said. "He's stabilizing." Lucas let out a breath so loud it fogged his glasses. "Holy—" Hayes shot him a look. "Sorry," Lucas whispered. Professional awe. Ethan's focus never wavered. He felt the dog's tension rise and fall like waves, felt every micro-adjustment through the collar. He responded instinctively, leaning in when the dog braced, easing back when he relaxed. A conversation. Without words. Minutes passed. The wound was packed, bandaged, reinforced. Lena sat back on her heels, carefully removing her gloves. "He's not out of danger," she said quietly, "but he's not bleeding out anymore." The room exhaled collectively. The injured K9's breathing was still ragged, but the panic was gone. His eyes were half-lidded now, exhaustion overtaking adrenaline. Ethan slowly eased his grip on the collar, testing. The dog didn't react. Ethan's shoulders loosened for the first time since they'd arrived. Hayes stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Ethan, how did you know?" Ethan didn't look at her. He was watching the dog's chest rise and fall. "I didn't," he said honestly. "I listened." Lena nodded. "Most people don't." Shadow moved then, one careful step forward, then another, until he was close enough for the injured dog to see him clearly. The injured K9's eyes opened fully at that. Shadow stopped, sat, and lowered his head slightly. Not submission, not dominance. Recognition. The injured dog watched him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he rested his head against the kennel floor, eyes closing again. Not sleep, relief. Lucas wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. "So, what now?" Hayes straightened, command settling back into her posture. "Now we get him inside. Warm, monitored, carefully." Ethan nodded. "I'll stay with him." Hayes didn't argue. They moved together then, quiet, coordinated. The kennel door opened wider. Ethan stayed close, one hand on the collar, one hand hovering near the dog's shoulder. The injured K9 didn't resist, didn't snap. He allowed himself to be guided out of the cruiser and into the clinic, each step slow, painful, deliberate. Shadow walked beside them the entire way, silent and steady. Inside, the warm air wrapped around them like a blanket. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but they dimmed them as much as possible. They settled the injured dog onto a padded mat near the exam table, not on it, on the ground, where he could see every exit. Ethan knelt beside him, never breaking contact. The dog's eyes fluttered closed again. Lena adjusted the IV line and checked the monitor. "Vitals are holding." Hayes crossed her arms, studying the scene. "He's not like Shadow." Ethan nodded. "No." "But he responded to you like he was," Hayes continued. Ethan looked down at the injured K9, then back at Shadow. Because underneath the training, Ethan said quietly, they all want the same thing. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Which is? Ethan's hand rested gently on the dog's neck, feeling the warmth there now, the steady pulse. Someone who won't leave when it hurts. The injured K9 let out a soft, broken sigh, and for the first time since anyone had laid eyes on him, his body fully relaxed. The clinic settled into a quieter kind of tension, the kind that followed catastrophe instead of announcing it. Machines hummed. A heart monitor ticked out a steady rhythm, soft and persistent. The storm still battered the outside walls, but it felt farther away now, muffled by brick and warmth, and the simple fact that nobody inside was bleeding anymore. The injured K9 lay stretched on the padded mat, his massive frame rising and falling with each breath. The bandage around his flank was thick and clean now, layered with practiced precision. His eyes remained half open, not asleep, not fully alert, tracking movement in the room without panic. Ethan stayed kneeling beside him. He hadn't been told to. Nobody had needed to. Shadow lay on the opposite side of the mat, positioned so that the injured dog could see him without having to turn his head. A quiet presence, an anchor. Dr. Lena Moore adjusted the IV drip and glanced up at Ethan. "We'll need to sedate him lightly eventually," she said. "Not now, but soon. For pain management." Ethan nodded, "as long as he knows what's happening." Lena met his gaze. "That's the part most people skip." Captain Maria Hayes stood near the door, arms crossed, watching the scene like she was committing it to memory. "I've been doing this job a long time," she said slowly. "I've never seen a dog de-escalate like that without chemical assistance." Ethan didn't look up. "Most de-escalation isn't about stopping behavior, it's about answering a question." Hayes tilted her head. "What question?" Ethan's hand rested flat against the dog's chest now, feeling the steady thump beneath the fur. "Whether the world is still safe enough to trust." Deputy Lucas Reed hovered a few feet away, trying very hard not to look like he was hovering. He cleared his throat quietly. "So, not to interrupt the miracle, but dispatch just called. They want to know what we're classifying this as." Hayes glanced at him. "Classifying?" "Yeah," Lucas said, shifting his weight. "Because technically this is a K9-involved incident, a medical emergency, and—" he gestured vaguely at the dog, "a potential use-of-force situation that didn't happen." Hayes sighed. "Tell them it's under control." Lucas nodded, then hesitated. "And the dog?" Hayes looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at the injured K9. "He's not a suspect," Ethan said quietly. "He's a survivor." The injured K9's ears twitched at the sound of Lucas's voice. His eyes opened a fraction wider, scanning. Ethan responded immediately, lowering his tone. "It's okay." The dog's gaze softened again, returning to Ethan. Lena observed the exchange with sharp interest. "He's bonded to you faster than most working dogs do in weeks." Ethan shook his head slightly. "Not bonded, anchored." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Difference?" "Bonding is built," Ethan said. "Anchoring is remembered." Silence settled over the room again, heavier now with implication. Lena glanced at the dog's chart, then back at Ethan. "You've worked with dogs like this before." It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't answer right away. He watched the injured K9's breathing, counted it unconsciously. "Yes," he said finally. Hayes stepped closer, voice careful. "How many?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "Enough." Shadow shifted, pressing his shoulder gently against Ethan's knee. Ethan rested his hand briefly on Shadow's back, grounding himself as much as the dog. The injured K9 stirred then, just a small movement. His head lifted, eyes focusing again, sharper now. He glanced around the room, alert but not panicked, cataloging the space. His gaze lingered on Lena, on Hayes, on Lucas. Then it returned to Ethan. The dog let out a low, questioning sound. Ethan leaned closer. "You're safe," he said softly. "No one's touching you without you knowing." The dog's ears flicked. Lena crouched again, careful to stay within Ethan's line of sight. "I'm going to check your bandage," she said calmly, just looking. The dog tensed, but didn't growl. Ethan nodded once. "She's going to look." The injured K9 held still. Lena gently lifted the edge of the bandage, inspected it, then replaced it. No new bleeding. The dog exhaled sharply. "Good," Ethan murmured. Hayes watched the exchange, something unreadable in her expression. "Ethan, Command's going to ask questions." "I know. They're going to want to know why you took point, why you delayed sedation, why you—" She gestured at the scene. "Did whatever this is." Ethan finally looked up at her fully. "Then I'll tell them the truth," he said. "That force would have killed him." Hayes studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "I'll back you." Lucas blinked. "Wait, really?" Hayes didn't look at him. "Yes, really." Lucas's mouth opened, then closed. "Okay, cool. Just checking which reality we're in." The injured K9 shifted again, more deliberately this time. He struggled to sit up, muscles shaking. Ethan reacted instantly, moving closer. "Easy. You don't need to move." The dog ignored him. With a low grunt of effort, he pushed himself upright, unsteady, wounded, but determined. Ethan stayed with him, one hand ready, not restraining. The dog sat. Then, slowly, he turned his head, not toward Ethan, toward Shadow. Shadow remained still, watching. The injured K9 studied him intently, nostrils flaring as he took in Shadow's scent. His ears angled forward, posture alert but not aggressive. Shadow tilted his head slightly. A silent exchange passed between them, too subtle for language, but heavy with meaning. Then the injured K9 leaned, just a fraction toward Shadow. Shadow responded by shifting closer, closing the gap without crowding. The injured dog's head dipped. Not submission. Recognition. Lucas whispered, "Is he saluting him?" Ethan almost smiled. "Working dogs know their own," Ethan said quietly. The injured K9's strength gave out then. His body wavered. Ethan moved without thinking, catching him, guiding him back down onto the mat. The dog didn't resist the support. He accepted it. When he settled again, his head came to rest against Ethan's thigh, not clinging, choosing. The room went very still. Hayes felt something tighten behind her ribs. "Well," she said quietly, "that answers the handler question." Lena looked up sharply. "Handler question?" Hayes nodded toward the dog. "Command's going to ask who he'll work with after this." Lena followed her gaze to Ethan. The implication settled heavy in the room. Ethan stiffened slightly. "That's not—" The injured K9 shifted again, pressing his head more firmly against Ethan's leg. Ethan fell silent. Lucas looked between them, eyes wide. Oh, wow." Lena straightened slowly. "That dog just made a decision." Ethan swallowed. "He doesn't even know me." Lena shook her head. "He knows enough." Hayes stepped closer, her voice gentle now. "Ethan, I'm not saying anything changes tonight, but when this goes up the chain, they're going to ask." Ethan looked down at the dog, whose eyes had closed again, body heavy with exhaustion. "I'm not looking for another assignment," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't bring him here to recruit him." "I know," Hayes said. Shadow shifted closer, pressing against Ethan's other side. Ethan found himself between them, two dogs trained for danger, both choosing stillness instead. Lena checked the monitor again. "He's stable enough to move to recovery." Ethan nodded. "I'll walk with him." Hayes didn't argue. They moved carefully, slowly, down the short hall to a quieter room. Ethan stayed with the injured K9 the entire time, matching his pace, adjusting when he faltered. Shadow walked alongside, silent and steady. When they settled the injured K9 onto a thicker mat, dimmed the lights, and closed the door, the storm outside felt like a different world. Ethan knelt beside him again. The dog opened one eye, fixed it on Ethan. Ethan leaned in. "You did good." The dog's tail thumped once, weak but deliberate. A promise. The recovery room was darker than the rest of the clinic, lit only by a single lamp turned low and the soft glow of the monitor. The walls were thick, insulated against noise. The storm outside still raged, but here it sounded distant, like weather happening to someone else. The injured K9 lay on his side now, breathing deep and slow. The worst of the pain had dulled into something manageable. Not gone, just quiet enough to let exhaustion take over. Ethan stayed beside him. He hadn't taken off his coat. He hadn't checked his phone. He hadn't shifted from his spot except to keep pressure steady or adjust when the dog moved. Shadow lay at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded but alert. Always alert. Dr. Lena Moore closed the door gently behind them and spoke in a low voice. "I gave him a microdose," she said, "just enough to take the edge off. He tolerated it because you told him first." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." Lena studied him for a moment. "You didn't just tell him, you asked." Ethan didn't respond. Lena crossed her arms loosely. "Most people don't realize how much working dogs understand or how much they remember." "They remember everything that matters," Ethan said quietly. Lena hesitated, then asked the question that had been hanging in the room since the parking lot. "Where did you learn to do that?" Ethan rested his hand on the injured canine's shoulder, fingers spread, feeling the warmth there. "I didn't learn it from a manual." Lena nodded slowly. "No, you don't read like someone who did." The door opened again, soft this time. Captain Maria Hayes stepped in, shutting it behind her with care. Lucas hovered just outside, peeking through the glass, then backing away when Hayes glanced at him. Hayes leaned against the wall, posture relaxed, but eyes sharp. "Command's going to want a report," Ethan nodded. "I'll give them one. They're going to ask why sedation was delayed. I'll tell them it would have killed him." Hayes tilted her head. "They'll ask how you knew." Ethan looked down at the dog. "Because I've seen it before." Hayes didn't push. She didn't need the details, not yet. She studied the injured canine instead. "Do we know where he came from?" Lena answered. "No chip, no local registry. His harness was military grade but stripped of identifiers." Hayes exhaled slowly. "So someone trained him to disappear." Ethan's jaw tightened. Someone trained him to survive. The injured canine stirred, ears twitching at the shift in tone. Ethan immediately softened his voice. "Easy." The dog relaxed again. Hayes watched that, eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion, but recognition. "He's keyed to you," Ethan shook his head. "He's keyed to stability." "Which you provide," Hayes said simply. Silence stretched between them. Then Hayes spoke again, quieter. "You know what happens next." Ethan nodded. "They'll want to reassign him. They'll want to evaluate you." Ethan didn't look up. "I'm not looking for another dog." Hayes stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This isn't about what you're looking for. This is about what he needs." Ethan finally met her gaze. "And what if what he needs isn't a badge or a patrol car?" Hayes held his eyes. "Then we find a way to make that answer official." Shadow shifted, pressing closer to Ethan's leg. Ethan's hand dropped automatically to rest on Shadow's head. The injured canine opened one eye again, watching the exchange. Hayes noticed. "He's listening." "He always is," Ethan said. Lena checked the monitor one last time. "He'll sleep now, for real?" Ethan nodded. "We'll be here." Lena smiled faintly. "I know." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth. I've never seen a dog choose a handler like that." Ethan looked down at the injured canine. "Neither have I." The room fell quiet again. Minutes passed, maybe more. The injured canine's breathing deepened, muscles loosening as sleep finally claimed him. His body slackened in a way it hadn't since before the injury, since before whatever had happened out there in the snow. Ethan stayed still. He felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest, heavy and unfamiliar. This wasn't adrenaline. This wasn't crisis. This was aftermath. Hayes eventually straightened. "I'll handle command." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "You did the right thing." Ethan didn't answer. Because the truth was, he hadn't done it because it was right. He'd done it because he couldn't do it any other way. Hayes left quietly. The room belonged to Ethan, Shadow, and the sleeping dog now. Ethan leaned back against the wall, finally letting his shoulders sag. Shadow lifted his head and looked up at him. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he murmured, "I feel it too." Shadow's tail thumped once. The injured canine shifted in his sleep, let out a soft sound, half breath, half dream. Ethan reached out and rested his hand gently on the dog's neck. "Not tonight," he whispered. "Tonight you rest." The storm outside howled. Inside, for the first time in a long while, no one was fighting. Morning didn't arrive all at once. It seeped in slowly through the narrow window high on the recovery room wall, turning the darkness a dull gray before the sun ever showed its face. The storm had spent itself some time before dawn, leaving behind a world scrubbed raw and quiet. Snow clung to the ledges outside like it had always been there, like nothing had happened. Inside, the first sound wasn't an alarm. It was a breath, steady, deep, alive. Ethan's eyes opened before his body fully woke. He'd slept sitting up against the wall, one knee bent, the other stretched out, his coat still on. Shadow lay pressed against his leg, warmth soaking through fabric and bone alike. On the mat beside them, the injured K9 shifted, slowly, carefully. His eyes opened, clearer now, focused without that sharp edge of panic. He took in the room the way soldiers did after a hard night. Inventory first, emotions later. His gaze landed on Ethan. Ethan didn't move. He didn't speak either. He waited. The dog's nostrils flared as he scented the air. Hospital, antiseptic. Familiar now, no immediate threats, no raised voices, no hands reaching. Ethan was still there. Shadow, too. The injured K9's head lowered back to the mat, not in weakness, but acceptance. His tail thumped once, soft, restrained, deliberate. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Morning," he murmured. Shadow lifted his head, ears perked. The door opened quietly. Captain Maria Hayes stepped in, coffee in one hand, a folded file in the other. She stopped when she saw the three of them, man, dog, frozen in a tableau that felt older than policy. Hayes smiled faintly. "I see I'm late." Ethan shifted, wincing slightly as his leg protested. "He slept." Hayes nodded. "So did command." She set the coffee down near Ethan and leaned against the wall. "They ran his vitals through the night. No complications. He's strong." Ethan looked at the injured K9. He always was. Hayes studied him for a moment. "You ready for the conversation?" Ethan didn't pretend not to know what she meant. "Tell me how bad it is." "Not bad," Hayes said. "Complicated." She opened the file, not a disciplinary packet, not an incident report, something else. "There's no record of him in civilian systems," Hayes continued. "No active military registry either. Whatever unit trained him, they're gone." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And the dog?" Hayes closed the file. "Technically, he doesn't exist." Silence stretched. Shadow's tail flicked once. The injured K9 watched Hayes closely, ears angled, reading tone, if not words. Hayes met Ethan's eyes. "Which gives us options." Ethan stayed quiet. Hayes went on. "Command agrees with Dr. Moore. Reassignment to a standard K9 unit would likely re-traumatize him." "And retirement?" Ethan asked. Hayes shook her head. "Too soon. He's not done working. He just needs the right structure." Her gaze flicked briefly to Shadow, then back to Ethan. "And the right handler," she said. Ethan looked down at the injured K9 again. The dog shifted, pushing himself slowly, carefully, into a seated position. The bandage held. His body wobbled, but he stayed upright. Then, without prompting, he leaned forward and rested his head against Ethan's knee. Not heavy, not desperate, certain. Hayes exhaled softly. "Well, that answers that." Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly. "I know," Hayes replied, "but neither did he." Shadow stood and moved closer, forming a quiet triangle around Ethan. Hayes straightened. "Here's what I can do. Temporary assignment, evaluation period, no rush back into the field, no public record, just you, Shadow, and him, training, recovery." Ethan opened his eyes. "And if it doesn't work?" Hayes met his gaze evenly. "Then we stop. No harm done." The injured K9 lifted his head, eyes flicking between them, alert. Ethan rested a hand on the dog's neck. "You hear that?" The dog's ears twitched. "You get a choice," Ethan said softly. "No one's forcing you." The dog didn't move away, didn't hesitate. He stayed. Hayes smiled just a little. "Looks like he already made his." Dr. Lena Moore appeared in the doorway then, tablet tucked under her arm. She paused, taking in the scene. "Vitals are solid," she said. "Pain's under control. He's going to heal." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." Lena looked at the injured K9, then at Ethan. "You're not a typical officer." Ethan huffed quietly. "That's what they keep telling me." Lena's smile faded into something more serious. "Take care of him." "I will," Ethan said. Hayes checked her watch. "I'll make the calls. You don't need to move yet." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Ethan." "Yes, ma'am." "You did good work last night," Hayes said, "not just as an officer." Ethan dipped his head slightly. "Thank you." When the door closed again, the room felt different, lighter. Ethan shifted, finally standing fully. His legs protested, but he ignored it. The injured K9 watched him closely. Ethan crouched in front of him, bringing himself down to eye level. "We'll take it slow," he said. "No surprises." The dog studied him for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead lightly against Ethan's chest. A quiet, unmistakable gesture. Ethan swallowed. Shadow stepped closer, flanking Ethan's other side. 3 figures stood in the soft morning light, each carrying scars, each still standing. Ethan rested one hand on Shadow, the other on the injured K9. "All right," he said quietly. "We'll figure it out. Together." Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting pale light across the snow-covered world. Inside, something steadier took hold. Not a miracle, not a legend, just trust, earned, shared, and chosen.